Alrighty, hello everybody. It's 2 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started. You should be able to see my screen and then also hear me and see me now. If you can let me know in the chat, that would be really helpful. But yeah, like I said, welcome to today's Edulastic Teacher Premium training. My name is Jan, and I'm joined by several of my colleagues today as well. Jennie is on the line, and she will be giving the heart of today's presentation. Also on the line is Ileana Betancourt, and she'll be helping to answer questions in the chat and also answer questions in the Q&A bubble. I will just be giving a short little intro right now before passing it off to my colleague, Jennie. Alrighty, so as part of our little introduction, just a few housekeeping things to go over. The first, I just mentioned the chat. If everybody could please type in the chat, maybe where you're tuning in from, and also what you're looking forward to getting out of this training. In addition to that, I also launched a poll a few minutes ago. It looks like most of you have voted, but if everybody could vote in that poll, that would be awesome. That helps us get an understanding of who's here so that we can cater the presentation to you. All right, it looks like we have people from all over. I see Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Texas, Philadelphia, Louisiana, Oregon, Texas, California. Awesome. I'm in California as well. Nice and sunny day here. Florida. Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for being here. That's really cool from all over the place. So I'm going to go ahead and end this poll and launch our next poll. Give me just a moment. Okay, I just launched the second poll. If everybody could please take that, that would be awesome. Again, that'll just help us get an understanding of who's here and how familiar you are with Edulastic. So we've tested out the chat. We've talked about polls. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the Q&A bubble. And if you have official questions throughout the duration of the training, if you have questions, please type them into that little Q&A bubble. This helps myself and Ileana and Jennie keep track of all the questions that are coming in so that we either can type an answer back to you or we will answer them verbally during our designated Q&A time at the end. Here is today's plan. So this is our short little introduction piece. In just a moment here, I'll be passing things off to Jennie, and she'll be going over an Edulastic Teacher Premium account, pretty in-depth. So we'll spend about 40 minutes. Jennie will share her screen and walk us through lots of really cool stuff that is included in a Teacher Premium account. So that includes advanced tools, different rostering options that come in Edulastic Teacher Premium, some really cool banks of libraries and questions and tests that are available in Edulastic, some different assign policies, some security features, so that's anti-cheating tools and things along that realm, and then more. There's really so much that comes with the Teacher Premium account, and we're excited to share it with you today. Like I said a moment ago, we will have a time at the end for us to answer any questions out loud. So we'll do our best to type answers back to you, and then we'll also get to them at the end too. All righty, Jennie, I know your video is already on, but if you want to say hi and introduce yourself and then go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, hi. Hello, everybody. I'm Jennie and I work with the customer success team. And so for the last several years, we have helped roll out Edulastic, Premium Edulastic to large districts, to individual schools, and to many, many, many individual teachers in these kind of sessions. So we've got a lot of experience with teaching Edulastic, but also our whole team supports the chat line and the support queue. So we also are very familiar with a lot of the questions that come up, and I'll try to address some of those to head them off so that you don't have to experience those or don't get frustrated by those. So I'm looking at the poll here, and it's really interesting to see that we actually have almost a 30% split across the board. So we've got about 33% of you are brand new to Edulastic, never seen it before, it sounds like. About 30% have used the free version, but are just moving over to the premium, excuse me. And then almost about 20 to 30% are experienced with Edulastic free and premium. So for you folks, I think this will be just a good refresher on some of those key tools. We are continuing to roll out new tools almost every week. We're making improvements to the performance, to the filtering. There's all kinds of stuff that's going on in the back end every week. So hopefully some of you who are experienced with both free and premium will also get a few nuggets of features or shortcuts that you can use going forward. So I'm going to end the poll here, and I'm going to share my screen. And I, like many of you, have a house full of kids that are working from home as well. And so we've got loads of Zoom going on. So just to preserve my bandwidth, I'm going to turn off my camera here. Bear with me as I'm finding what I need to do. It'll just make things move a little bit faster. Close out the Zoom. And so where I'm going to start with you here is I'm going to show you the home page of Edulastic, because often what happens is we bookmark or we have in our cache the Edulastic app link already set up, and it's very easy to not come back to this main page unless you know all the great features that are here. So I want to spend just a few seconds before we start by focusing on this resources tab. This is where you will get access to our teacher training hub, to our blog, and then all of the links to on-demand and live training. You can see this here. You can also get quick links over to our quick start guide, over to the YouTube channel that's got a lot of these great videos, and also those webinars and the live webinars and on-demand webinars if you want to get some we want to catch up or brush up on a couple of the skills we talk about. The other thing I'll point out is if you are somebody who is being tasked with rolling this out to other teachers at your school or your district, you can also get these training kits. And we even will send you out some swag to make that presentation just a little bit more interesting. So that's all found at the resources page, and this links you to everything that's on demand and live, and it's a good place to just visit back every now and then. And I know that our emails that come from our marketing team will often drive you here, but this is how you get to it outside of those. So let's just jump away from here and I'll dive into the app. For those of you that, I'm assuming that almost everybody on here was already signed in and had an account. If not, that's pretty easy. Back on the page that I was on, you'll just log in and you'll start the sign up process for teachers or students or admins. But let's assume that everybody does have their account already created. And I'm going to point out that this is the dashboard. This is where you'll all land when you sign in. And I'll collapse and open up this left navigation bar, and it'll show you all of the areas that we're going to be going over. And this is really sort of the way we're starting to organize all of our messages, and all of our support queue is sort of based on this organization, so that it's easier for you to find the questions, find answers to the questions that you have. So when you sign in, everybody is likely to have already signed in and seen this. You'll be on your dashboard. If you haven't created any classes, this will be blank. And there's actually some new tutorial sessions that show up here for brand new teachers that have not created a class yet. We also are featuring some of our content bundles. So these are things that you have access to that are free. So you can jump in and explore some of these content areas as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just walk you through the process of a teacher that's just decided to use Edulastic, or just been a school that has just purchased Edulastic, and you have to start from scratch. And so I'll walk you through that scenario, what you would do first, second, third, and then how you would actually start to analyze some of your results. So from when you sign in from the dashboard, I'm going to point you first all the way down here to your profile. In your profile, since this, over the last couple of months, we've added a few features here that you may or may not be familiar with, and you may have just passed right by when you signed up originally. So again, this is where you could edit your profile here. If you are leaving your school, or you're finished, you're switching districts, for example, and you no longer have access to your district email ID, this is where you might delete your account, and that's a self-service feature that you can delete it on your own. The other thing here is that you can add one or more schools that you're connected with. This will open up the access to the school libraries where other teachers have posted things in your school. So if you're not seeing the assessments that you think should be there, or that your other teachers or your other colleagues are talking about, it might be you'd want to check to make sure that your schools are listed properly. So that actually, and as I go through this, I'll point out those troubleshooting areas. That's often one of the questions that we get in the support queue is how come I can't find my colleagues' assignments? My other teachers in my district are using it and I don't see it. So that's the first place to check. The next thing we'll talk about is this is where you can select your standard sets. So whatever standards you are using in your district or your school or your state even, if you include these on here and you've got them selected, then when you're searching for assessments in our libraries, or if you're building assessments, you'll see these standards connected to any of the assessments that you're building or looking at. If you don't see any standards connected to it, it's almost always because the standard sets are not correctly linked up here. So that's another thing you'd want to take a look at. The benefit of doing this also is that you will have, it'll filter we have thousands of sets of standards from all different districts, all different states, different subjects. And so all of those are served up. So when you have this when you've selected your standard sets, you're really filtering down for just the ones you use the most. And you'll still have access to the other ones, but this just streamlines the process a lot faster. Same thing, interested grade and interested subject. These are not mandatory, but this again helps filter through all of the content or the options that you have when you're going through the website. And then down here, if you are a Google Classroom user and you want to automatically share your assignments with your Google Classroom, you can turn this on. If you don't want to automatically share all assignments, leave it off, and then I'll show you as going through when we go through the process, how you can manually or add those assignments in a one-off fashion. Finally, if you are somebody who's going to be creating a lot of content, writing questions, building assessments, you might consider turning on this power user toggle. This will give you quite a few extra advanced options when you're building questions, and it allows you to affect some of the layout. It allows you to manipulate some of the size of the containers and do quite a few extra things. By default, we keep this turned off for all teachers and admins because it just adds a ton of extra standards. And the feedback we got originally was that it was a little intimidating to see so many standards when you're building a test. So we leave it off by default. If you want to add it or just play around with it a little bit, you can turn it on and off at any time. So that's the key here with your profile. Before I leave this area, I'm also going to point out something here, and this is called the switch account. What this is if you haven't done anything with this yet, you'll see add account. And once you've added an account, then you'll see switch account like I have. This allows you to have multiple accounts in Edulastic under multiple roles. So you might be a teacher who's assigning assessments to his or her class, but you also have an admin function where you might be an instructional lead or a school site lead or a district-wide lead. And so you'll need to have access to another type of account in Edulastic. And so you can build that other account and then you can switch back and forth between them. So by clicking it, this is what it looks like. You can choose between, in this case, I have a district admin account and I have a student account. I actually like to keep, and a lot of our teachers do keep the student account or create a student account, because then they can go back and forth and see when they assign something, what it looks like from the student's perspective, or if you need to see how some data or something rolls out, or you're responsible for assigning a common benchmark, for example, then you would want to use that district admin. So you're able to toggle through several different roles here. And let me point out that you can actually use the same email address for each one of these accounts. So this user is a teacher, and my account is at Nowens and Nala Owens at Edulastic or Eden.com, and I could also have that be a district admin and a student account as well. It's a nice feature. It really makes it easy to juggle multiple roles on your school site and in Edulastic, and it's meant to reflect that. So that's really the first thing I want you to look at is go into your profile, make sure these things are set up for you, because it'll really narrow down and filter all of your information. And then the next logical step is, okay, we've got to add our class. So you're going to go to the Manage Class tab, and this is where you're going to build your classes. So it looked like about 30% of you, almost 40% of you were using Edulastic at a school site or through the district site. And if that's the case, your district or your school has most likely already made some decisions about how you're going to roster, how the teachers will roster the students, and how those accounts will be assigned. So you'll likely follow suit with whatever that has been arranged with the school or the district. But I will briefly go over the different ways that you can roster. And this applies to this would apply to premium teachers or individuals who are using Edulastic on their own outside of a school uh, engagement. So you would, the easiest, the simplest way to work with Edulastic is if you already use Google Classroom, then just use the sync with Google Classroom wherever possible, and it will automatically roster for you. So you can, if you've got a blank managed class, you haven't set anything up yet, you can start up here and you can sync with Google Classroom. It'll prompt you to select your account. And then all of your pre-existing Google Class codes will show up here and you can just hit sync. And that will build, for every one of your classes, that will build a class. And for every one of your Google classes, that will build a class in Edulastic. I'm not going to hit sync right now because I don't want to throw this off, but that's the first way. And that's sort of the easiest, quickest way to get logged in or get a class rostered. The other way is you can manually create it, and then you can either sync with Google or you can add students yourself. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. You start over here with the create class, and you'll enter the class name. I'm just going to call this demo class. It's automatically going to populate the start and the end dates. I'm going to point something out here about the end date. Usually in the third or fourth week of July, Edulastic will automatically archive all of the previous year's classes for you, so that when you start up the next school year, it's a clean slate. You're not looking at a whole bunch of extra work, and it will just move all of those into an archive state. You'll still be able to access them, but that it will help. The idea is to help you get ready for the next year. By properly paying attention to this date, if you happen to have a non-traditional school year, or you're teaching summer school, or for some reason you're going to need a longer start and end times, start and end times, then this date you'll pay attention to, because we will automatically archive it. So make sure you change it to reflect your actual class start and ends. Here you'll select the grade that you're teaching, the subject. I'm just going to at random pick a few things. Here I'm going to choose my standards. As I mentioned earlier, you can see this is just ELA alone, and you can see the thousands of standards that we have for each one of the subjects. The course, you can choose that or not, but that typically is something that your district has already been using, and it might be like reflective of, this would be grade 4 ELA, and I might find grade 2 ELA here. Finally, because I'm connected with 2 schools, I'm going to select the school that this is connected with, and then I'm going to save that class. So what that's done is that's created a demo class. And if I go back here to my main list of classes, you'll see that it shows up here, and I've got 0 students enrolled in this class, but I've already got the shell of my class here. These classes I've already set up for other demos, and I'll dive into those in a second. But let's show you what it looks like to actually build out a class. So as I mentioned earlier, you can sync all of your classes at once with Google Classroom, or you can build the class and then sync one at a time. So if I were to do that, it's prompting me to enter my Google Class code. So I'm going to stop here and just give a little pause. A lot of the times that we have questions about Google Classroom and not syncing, going this route is one way to solve that. So rather than syncing all of your classes at once, if you're having problems doing that, then I suggest build the class and then go back in and just do it one at a time and add the Google Class code directly. You'll also have this option here that if you have co-teachers, do you want to include them as well? And then once you've added that, you'll just hit sync. So that would automatically roster your class. The other way that you can do this is you can add multiple students at once. And so we'll manually add a couple of students here using that method. So you would just paste their email address, and you could do it if this method works if you're using Google usernames, Office 365 usernames, or if you want to enter the first and last name of the student or the last and first name, we will generate a user ID for that student, a unique user ID. This is a nice feature if you're isolated, you're working just by yourself, or you're one of the few in your school that's using Edulastic, because we will generate a username for every student in your class. If another teacher is using this exact same method, that they will generate a second username for all of the students that you've generated if they happen to overlap. So I'll give you the example of like a 7th grade student who has an English class and they're using Edulastic in the English class, and then also has a math teacher and the math teacher's using Edulastic. If both teachers used this last method here, that student would have 2 different usernames. So it gets to be a little bit, it can cause a little bit of problems, and the student has to figure out which account to use for which class, and obviously that's not an ideal situation. So what I recommend in almost all situations is that you use students' email addresses, whether it's Office 365, Google, or just your school email address, and you just enter those in here. So you would just copy and paste from your roster. I'm just gonna make some silly ones here, and I'll just copy that a couple of times, and just so you can get the idea. And I'll just put 1, 2, 3, so they don't show up as the same students. And then once you've just copied and pasted the emails, then you just click add to class. It shows that the student will be added to class, and it tells the teacher that right now all they're going to see is the student's username, that the students will be able to update their first and last name the first time that they sign in. So now I'll hit done. And so the question is, what's the password? And the password in this situation is the class code up here. Or as the teacher, you can just go ahead and change that. So I'm going to select all of these students. I'm going to go over here to the actions button, and I'm going to reset the password for everybody. And I'm going to call this just welcome. Make it something simple that your students will remember, so you don't have to repeat a password every time. And then once they've got their first password, then they can sign in on their own and create their own password.
Hey, Jenny, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
We had a few questions about what if you don't see that Sync with Google Classroom button in the upper right-hand corner? What other options do you have for rostering and adding students?
Okay, if you don't see it, it's likely because the district has decided or has turned that off, or your school or your district admin has turned that off and not allowed you to sync with Google Classroom. So if that's incorrect and you think it should be there, you can send a note to support, and we can help you work through that process and find the right situation or find the right contact for you or add it for you. So that's one option. Otherwise, you go about it with this the method that I just showed you, where you just copy and paste all of the Google usernames in that add multiple students process. And so you'll just grab a class roster, a spreadsheet or something, copy the column with all of the student usernames using their Google usernames. And then from there on, the students can sign in using Google single sign-on. That'll be an option for every at every login, and they can continue to do that. And then you can also other teachers that are using other teachers in the same school or district where there's an overlap of students, they can also just use the same Google username, and it will just confirm that that student already exists in the system, and they'll be added to your class.
Great, thank you, Jenny.
Yeah. Okay, so once you have this here, you can change the password. Now that you're starting to roster, you can make a few changes here and you can add a few things to this class. So I'm going to start up here with co-teachers. If you have a co-teacher that works with you, whether that's an aide or a colleague who just shares your duties, or it's even just a backup person, a third option for this is like a long-term sub, for example. These are all use cases for adding a co-teacher. You can just add their name or their email or their username here. Now, the only trick is that they have to have an Edulastic account in order to be added, an Edulastic teacher account in order to be added as a co-teacher. So then you could add that co-teacher. And once you've added one, you can manage the co-teacher. You can add or remove them. I'm going to add a co-teacher from my department here. Let's see. I think I've got a name in here. Oh, let's see. I'll just start with any. There we go. Name. Okay. And so that name comes up. It's in my district, and I'm going to add her. And then the co-teacher shows up here. Now the co-teacher has all of the same options, all of the same privileges as the main teacher, including adding other co-teachers. So if for some reason you had to be out, you could actually, that co-teacher could take over and grade, assign, and manage all of the student accounts, et cetera, within that class. You can also manage the co-teacher here now that it's been added, and so you can change or add other co-teachers, and you can modify the primary teacher versus the co-teacher. All of that is a self-service tool that's available up here. The last thing I'll talk about while I'm in here is that you can add, as one of the premium features is the feature called text to speech, and you can add that by selecting the students that should be allowed to have text to speech, and going to the actions and then enabling it. So when you enable this, the student will see a little icon on all of their assignments where they can push the button and the questions will be read aloud to them. If you don't want them to do it for all assignments, but just a few assignments, then you can just, when necessary, enable or disable it. And then it's turning it on or turning it off. So text to speech has been really useful for obviously younger students and IEP students who require it, but it's been especially useful with our hybrid scenarios these last school years. So that's something you may be very interested in using, turning on and off. And then over here, if you notice that little mask that keeps popping up, this is how you as a teacher can visit a student's account. So if I click this, it's going to proxy me into that student's account. And then you can see what the student is seeing. This is a way of seeing what the assignments look like that you've assigned. Also, just double checking what, if a student is having problems or having trouble accessing something, you can go into that student's account that way and just double check and make sure that everything's the way it should be. And so whatever class the student's enrolled in is here, and you can filter through it. You can do everything that to look and see what the student has, but you can't actually make changes in the student account. So I'm going to stop acting as user, and then I just go back to my original teacher account. So that's the main thing here with the managed class. That's the ways to build your rosters. I also will point out that we have a new thing called groups. And this is if you have students that you want to pull out of your main classes and put into a different group. So this is really useful for maybe like a elementary teacher who wants to create a subgroup of students. It could be IEP, it could be honors, it could be those that are just struggling in certain ways and need different types of assignments or a little bit extra time on assignments. You can build create a group here and pull students in from your classes. So to create a group, you just follow it the same way you would do same way you would do the class. I'm just randomly picking something here so we can get to this really quickly. When I save it, then to add students, oh, that's interesting. It's taking its time. I'm going to edit the group. There we go. Oh. Well, in the world of live demos, this often happens. So we'll come back to it later if there's questions about it, but you would be able to, there'd be a little button here that just walk you through adding students to that group. Okay, so that's the groups section. Again, both of those are here from classes and groups on the Manage Class tab. Now, I've spent a long time with sort of the foundation. Now, the next part will go a little bit quicker. I'm going to jump you up here. And once you've got your class set up, now you're ready to start assigning. And most of our teachers will jump into our libraries and find something that already exists and assign it directly to their students, or modify it a little bit and then assign it to their students. So the next thing we'll do is we'll look at that process. So I'm going to start with the test bank. Here in the test bank, you have already pre-developed assessments that are open for you to use. And the first thing you're going to want to do is you'll want to start here with the filter. our filters are very sticky. This year we went to a new platform, and we found that it's not, our users tend to go through, and as we do ourselves as well, tend to go through really quickly through this, and we're accidentally clicking on things, and it's holding on to it, so it's throwing off the filters a little bit. So I caution you, if you're finding that you're not if you're not finding what you want, then just slowing down and making sure you've got all these filters set is the key. So right now I'm searching the entire library. I'm going to go over to 8th grade because that's what my demo class is about. I'm going to go to ELA assignments. I'm going to select my standard set, which in my case would be Common Core. And then if I wanted to pick an assessment that had specific standards, like a language standard or something that I was working on, I could drill down here and select that. And I also can look at different collections. So as a premium or an enterprise, with an enterprise account, you have access to purchasing libraries and item banks that are beyond just the public library bank. So you do have the option to purchase additional, although you don't need to, because you've got your private library, the school library, the district library, the public library, which is populated by thousands of teachers. And then we have these Edulastic certified questions. And so I'm going to start with that because the Edulastic certified are ones that have been vetted by us. We've either found them on open source educational resources like state departments of education from their release tests, or we've purchased them, or we've commissioned them to be created for you. And those live in the public bank with this extra little stamp to it that it's part of the Edulastic certified tests. So this gives me 167 grade 8 ELA tests that have been certified. And I will just click on any one of these here. Let's do practice test. And I can preview it. I can look at the details for each question as a teacher would see it. So here's the questions. These are all passages. So I'm going to open up a passage and I can see that there's 1 through 7 questions. By clicking on this little eyeball preview icon, you can see what that question looks like. I'm going to collapse this. And then if you want to use this as is, you can just go directly to this assign button. But let's say that this is a pretty lengthy test and I don't want to assign all of these to my students. On this one, I think I'll break it into 2 tests, 2 different assessments. So I'm going to modify it. And the way that I can modify it is by going over here and I'm going to clone it. And I can either use the questions as they are and just modify the number of questions and switch the order around, or I can create a completely new clone of all of these. And that allows me to actually edit some of the questions themselves. So I'm going to create a clone of all the items in the test up front, and I'll continue to clone. And if you've played around with Edulastic at all, you know this process. So I won't spend a lot of time on that, but here's where you're going to jump over here to the review. So I already looked at this and I've decided that there are too many here. So I'm going to just remove a few of these, and I'm going to just select the ones that I want to remove. Let's go do that. And then I'll just remove these. Another way that I can modify it, so you'll see actually that these have been successfully removed. Another way I can modify it is I can just drag it to a different location. So now I'm adjusting the order. I can also go into one of these now because I've cloned it and now you see that it's for me. I can go into one of these and I can actually edit each question. So I'm going to click this little pencil icon and I'm going to click this again. And here I can just make changes to the copy. I can remove things, remove options. I can change things around. You can change almost everything except for you can't change the question type that it is. So if it's a multiple choice, it's going to still be a multiple choice, but it gives you a lot of freedom to customize these the way that you'd want them to be. Once you've modified those, you've got a set of questions now that really match your style or match what your students need. You can keep changing them here, or you can just hit save. And now I've got a slightly altered, a very customized test that my students can use. And I've gone from 40 something items now down to 36. So I can keep paring it down or move things around a little bit. That's one of the ways that you can modify a test. The other way is you can add items. And by adding items, I'm jumping into the item bank or the question bank. And so these, again, it's remembered my filters, and it's giving me 96 questions that are set for ELA Common Core that are part of the certified group. And I can just go through here and I can add questions that I like. Again, of course, you would preview it and make sure that it's what you want. You could also, if you've found all these others that you want to use, you can also create your own. I won't go into the create your own process because that's a bit lengthy, but that is an option to you. And we've got loads of videos actually on the little cheat sheet that I've made available to you, gives you links to each one of these steps. So let's just jump back here. I've found this test I want to give to my students. I've looked at it in the review screen. I've edited it down. I've added a few other assessments here or a few other items here. And now I've got a truly custom piece here that I'm going to go ahead and either share with my colleagues, which is part of a premium feature, is the ability to share with other members in your district. And you can give them the ability to add, edit, or just view and duplicate. So you've got these options that are very much like sharing a Google Doc, for example. So sharing permissions on a Google Doc. This allows groups of teachers to co-author together, and it allows teachers to share assessments back and forth, whether they're co-authoring it from scratch or just giving feedback. And then you can just copy this and share it with those individuals. You can also send them an email notification that says, look at this test and give me your feedback. And once I've done that here, I'm gonna just close this out. You can save it, you can print the assessment, or you can publish it and assign it. So if I publish it, it'll just go in my library or my school's library. Let's just jump ahead here to the assign. This is one of the areas that is probably the most premium rich features of all of Edulastic. So when you're purchasing a premium or you have an enterprise account, this is one of those areas that you really get a whole bunch more than you would from the free version. And so this is the assign screen, and these are the policies that you'd select when you're assigning an assignment. You're going to choose the class to assign it to, or you can select individual students out of that class. You're going to set the open and close date. And then you can decide if it's going to be opened automatically or open manually in class. If this is a high stakes assessment, usually teachers will open it manually in class. That way they can make sure that all of the students are there and ready to take the test, and that students aren't accessing it outside of a controlled environment of either a teacher directed class. This way it's typically used for benchmarks and other high stakes assessments. But you could also do automatically start and automatically close. And then we've got this, you've got a couple different types of assessments that you can choose from as a teacher. A class assessment is anything that you're assigning to your class that's kind of the high stakes or a formal assignment. You can also choose to make something a practice assessment, which means that it's a lot more like those formative quick checks. And you can exclude all of those from your data when you're looking at the reports, because maybe if they're just like, hey, what do you know, or what do you remember, or if it's just a quick little fun exercise to jog a student's memory, then you wouldn't want that to be interfering with your ability to predict the outcome or predict how students are going to be doing or how well they've mastered a standard. So you can choose to make certain items practice items, and then when you're looking at them in the reports, you can exclude anything that's practice from those reports. So we'll keep it a class assignment. Now I'm going to go to this override test settings. And here's where we'll go through some of the options that you have. Mark is done automatically or manually. The key about mark is done is that's when all the data will flow to the reports. So it can be done automatically, and that is either when the due date has hit or every student has submitted all their assessments. So you can have that happen automatically, or you can just manually mark it. That's more of a preference. You have a choice of releasing scores or where you don't release the scores or responses on any assessment. So that would be maybe a high stakes assessment, where here's the option where you can release just the scores. or you can release the scores and what the student responded, their students' answers, or you can release everything, which would be the scores, the student responses, and the correct answers, the answers they should have chosen. And so you can see the uses for this. This might be a really good homework assignment where they want immediate feedback, or whereas this option where it shuts it all down might be something you'd use for a quarterly benchmark or a mid-year review, for example. Here, the maximum attempts allowed allows you to automatically redirect your assessment to your students. So you can say, I want to give them automatically, they can try it 3 times on their own. And that makes it so you don't have to actually redirect manually to the students to give them another try. It just, if they've gone through it and they've missed an answer on their dashboard, it will show them, do you want to try this again? Here's your score, do you want to try it again? So that's a nice feature, that's a premium feature. The Safe Exam Browser is something that a district would decide to purchase or use, sorry, a district would decide to implement. It is something that has to be done at a district network level. So if that's something that you're interested in, your customer success manager can help you work through that. Otherwise, it's not an option that's available for just individual accounts. Going back here to some of the security features, you can shuffle the answers and questions, which means it's just creating multiple versions for the students so they can't look at each other's papers and get the answers. You've got calculators, options for calculator. You can, if you're having any students that are working on paper versions, then you can select this answer on paper and it allows you to print it out for them. You can also set passwords. So you can have a dynamic password or a static password. And a static password would be something you've created like Mrs. T's test, and every student has the same assessment password. Or you could do the dynamic password, which is every 15 minutes, or you can adjust this every 10 minutes, a new password will be generated and the students can't get in without having that new password. You can also select these check answer tries per question, and that's it gives the student multiple attempts at each question before they move on or before they submit it. So they can take one question. If they miss it, there'll be a little alert that says, that's wrong, try again. And so in this situation, the student would have 2 attempts at each question to answer. There's options for partially allowing partial credit or not. Partial credit, these typically are used, mimic the state tests that the students would be experiencing. So you could give them, for example, if there's several, like a part A and a part B, they have to get both correct in order to get credit, or they can have partial credit. And then you can also set up this enable the auto redirect, which means if they have scored on this test, there's like 10 questions. If they've scored less than 8, then they can get another, as long as they're scoring less than 8, they can have another attempt, and you can set the number of attempts. And so this is automatically redirecting it for them. You can also set some of these deliveries where you can give them all of the questions back or just the ones they've skipped and got wrong. And you can also decide, you can also show if you're going to give them, they can see your feedback, they can see their score and your feedback, or the score, your response, their response and your feedback. So this is just a good way to differentiate between formative checks or very casual assessments and assignments compared to like a final exam, for example. And last, you can set these performance bands as you have in the free version of Edulastic. Also, I think you've got some cut scores that you can manipulate here, and you can do the same thing for the StandardsBased. So once you've set all these, then you're going to hit assign, and it will go over, it will assign, let's see here, it's just thinking slowly. So here, it's been successfully assigned, and now I can share this URL here with my Google Classroom, I mentioned it earlier, or any other learning management system where you post links, and this will take the student directly to their test in Edulastic. So you can copy that and paste it. And then here's where you can also share this assessment with other people or share it with your school or other members of the district. So that's the assign process. Now I've gone a little bit over my allotted time here, so I'll take a pause for a minute before I jump into the assignment screen. And I'm happy to spend a little extra time going over, but if there's some hot questions from people that need to leave right on time, then I can open that up for a few questions. Jan, do we have any?
Yeah, a couple questions that are relevant to what you were just talking about.
Okay.
One is, can you clarify the difference between check answer tries per question versus the number of total tries on the test?
Yes, let me jump back to that screen. Let's just go quickly. Okay. I shouldn't have gotten so far away. So we've just, in the last week or so, we've manipulated this a little bit. So let me just make sure that I can, let's see here. Okay, so maximum attempts allowed. So this one will set the number of attempts that the students will be given across the board. Like this would be for manual redirect or automatic redirect. And then down here, you've got the check answer tries per question. So you can automatically set that up for how many attempts at each question the student will have before they move on to the next question. So this first one is about attempts on the whole assessment, and this is about attempts on an individual question. And then this is our new section here that when you enable the auto direct, I think it's reinforcing some of these. It's just adding another layer of dimension for the number of tries or attempts that the students are allowed. So this applies to manually redirecting or automatically redirecting. And if you want to automatically redirect, then you're going to set the score threshold. So I haven't played around with this. It's on a unlimited assessment, but I think that it goes up to, this is the point value. And then the maximum attempts allowed. So it can automatically redirect for them 3 times. After that, the teacher has to set the redirect or has to manually redirect it. I think that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so too. Thank you, Jenny. And then while you're speaking about redirect, can you talk about the different choices teachers have when they manually redirect?
Okay, yes, it's the same thing as these here. Let's take advantage. Let's go to the live class board for this assignment, and I can show you what that looks like. So this is one that this is now, once I've set it out there, I'm now on the assignment screen where I can go to the live class board and see how students are doing. So this is the one I just assigned. I'm going to go down here to this main idea quiz, and I'm going to jump over here. I'm going to go to the live class board, and I can see that a couple of my students got several of these wrong. So let's just go through this and redirect it, and I'll show you those options. So I'm selecting the student's name. I'm going to give this student another shot. And now I can actually do it just one at a time, or I can do all the absent students or the entire class. In this case, I chose specific students. Here are the choices that you have. You can send them all of the questions, so it's like they're taking it all from scratch, or you can send just the ones that they skipped and got wrong. And then you can also then choose to show them the feedback that you've given only. So you might want to, in this situation, we'd have just the ones that they got wrong, and you'd have a little feedback that says, double check your step 3 on this equation, for example. Or you could get this, they could see what their score is on the assessment. So if you can look over here, this is 2 out of 4. So this student would see that she got 2 out of 4 correct, and my feedback on those incorrect ones. The student, you could also see just the student's response and the teacher's feedback, so they won't see their score, or you can see all of it. You can see the student's score, their student's first answer, and any feedback that the teacher has given. So those are the choices.
Awesome, thank you. A couple things are going on in the chat about the power user features. Do you mind showing where you can toggle that on if you're a premium teacher?
Yep.
We talked about this a bit at the beginning, but always good.
Yeah, so here in the profile, at the very bottom, you can toggle that on and off.
Awesome. And do you know, does power user need to be enabled for that auto redirect feature to be appearing?
No, power user is just for building questions.
Okay.
So the auto redirect is part of the settings, or the policies for assigning something. It's part of the assign settings, whereas this power user is purely about building questions.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. If you have anything else that you wanted to show at the end of your presentation, I would say go for it, Jenny, and then we'll get to the rest of these questions in just a few minutes here.
Okay, yeah, so I just want to spend a few more minutes on all the things you can do here on the assignment screen. So this is ways that you can access what's happening currently or in the past. Again, the filters are on here on the sides. You can create folders and you can send certain assessments to those folders. By the end of the school year, often the teachers will have quite a few assessments on their assignment screen. So it's easier to start making folders and signing them if you're trying to look back really quickly and find some information. So also from here, I'm going to use this main idea quiz. You roll across the top here and all of the classes you've assigned it to would be under here. So if you're an elementary teacher, you'll likely only ever see one class here. If you are a middle school or high school teacher, you might have all of your sections or your periods listed out here. Under the actions, you can perform actions at a high level for this assessment across all classes that have been assigned by you. Or if you want to affect a change on or modify or look at just one individual section, then you would click over here to go to the live class board. Whoops, I clicked too fast. Let me go back. Here, the main idea quiz. You could click here and just jump to the live class board for that class, or you could jump directly to the Express Grader, or you could go directly to reports on just that assessment. So these are some individual actions you can do here. I'm going to take you back to the live class board for this. Here you can see how each student has done per question. A few of the other premium features here are when you select a student and you go to the more, you can mark them as submitted, which means you're marking the student as already having submitted the assessment, and you can manually mark it. And then by marking it as submitted, you can then go up here to the Express Grader and you can modify any scores or information you need to for the Express Grader or for that assessment. Let me jump back over here to the more. Here you can unassign or assign certain students. If you've had a student that's come into your class after you've made this assignment, then you can add students. And marking as absent is a way that you can lock a student out before, or if they're absent or they're not in class. And so again, you would use that for like a high stakes assessment where you don't want somebody's brother or sister or somebody having a textbook outside of the class and answering the questions that way. Unless they're there on the Zoom with you or in the class in front of you, you might want to mark them as absent, and it would just pause it so that student can't access it until you redirect it again to that student. So those are, I think if you've played around with Edulastic at all, you've seen what it looks like when you click on a student card or when you click on a question here. So I won't go into that, but if you haven't, it's really awesome to just kind of play around with that and see where you can make comments and change scores. But you also can jump up here to the Express Grader. And this is where if you've got a couple of students that you need to change their scores, or if you had one student, for example, that took it on paper and you wanted to enter their scores in here, you would use the Express Grader. And it's just sort of a linear view of this, and you can either just change the score or change the response. And by clicking into any one of those questions, it'll take you to that student and that question. And here I can just manipulate the score and add comments that the students will see. And you can filter through to the next student or the next question by using these direction keys down here. When you're finished, just hit exit, and you'll see that that score has changed here. So the Express Grader is a really handy way to enter students who have been absent, or a lot of teachers use it for younger students who don't use the digital platform, but the teachers want to collect that data so they can enter it into Edulastic in this way. The other thing I'll show you here is the standards-based report. So these are the standards that were tested on this assessment, and you get a quick summary right here with all the students' scores. You can use this to show, you can present it. It goes to like a present mode, and you can show students, you can show other teachers, etc., in an anonymous sort of present mode. And that you'll notice it changes the names here. So that present mode is another premium feature. If you wanted to make a change to this assessment and you wanted to change the settings, for example, you would jump over here and let's say I want to add a graphing calculator, then I can just update that. Or in this case, you wanted to change the check answer tries per question, etc. You can make a lot of changes here. And let's just jump back here to the live class board. That present mode is also here, so you can show all of your students, like for example, on a Zoom meeting or on a smartboard when everybody's back in class. Again, you'll notice by hitting this present mode, I'm taking all of these names and I'm swapping them for icons or anonymizing basically it's not only anonymizing the names, but it's also shuffling the names and the order of the names. So this allows you to go through and show students and discuss the way students have answered questions and what some of the common misconceptions were. So that is what you would do when you're showing it to everybody, and then you can just hit reset and it goes back to their scores. So the last thing that I'm going to jump over here to is I'm going to show you the gradebook. The gradebook is just a way of taking a quick glance at all of the students' scores on the assessments that you've assigned to date. So you can go through here. Because this is a demo account, I've got a load of just these blank spots, but you'll notice that your classroom one might look a little bit more like this, where it's all filled in here, and you'll see the student scores, and you can just get a quick glance. Now this one, we call it a gradebook, but it's not something where you can enter grades. It's not something that you would use to manage your gradebook. It's just a quick snapshot. But the benefit here is if you're looking over an assessment, for example, and you're seeing a couple of students that have quite a lot of reds or problem areas, or they have something in common. For example, maybe they all did smashingly well on an assessment, then you could lump them into a group. So I'm just going to collect their names here. So these are ones that I'm seeing all these reds here. And I'm just going to assign them to a student group. And this might be a group that needs a little more extra help. And so I'll add those students. And now they're in my extra help group. And so that's all done from the gradebook. Again, it's just a visual and it's a way to quickly organize the way your students are performing.
One good question just came in about the gradebook. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay,
can you download grades into a CSV?
You can, okay, not from this gradebook file, but you can download the grades into a CSV from the live class board. So going back here, you're going to select all, and this is a premium feature also, and you can download just the grades for that class, or you can download the responses also. So you wouldn't get the essay responses here, but you would get any multiple choice, any true false, any auto graded things could be downloaded here with the response. And then you would just upload it into your gradebook, into your grade management system.
Thanks, Jenny.
Yeah, in fact, that spawned a good little thing. But as a former English teacher, I love this feature. You can print out the student's complete test. You can print out just the manually graded items, or you can print out a combination of just certain questions. The reason that an English teacher or a history teacher or somebody who's grading essays might love this is that you can actually print out any essays or any open response questions. You can print them out, and then you can mark up the students' answers and give them back your feedback directly on a piece of paper for each one of them. And that's just sort of a nice feature when you're, it's one of the drawbacks of digital assessment tools is that you really can't, like make annotations or comments that are really valuable to students in the process. It's really hard to do that in a small little comments box, but this allows you to print it out, scratch it up like they would have turned in an actual assessment. And that's that print feature. That is also a premium feature. Okay, so with 1 minute left, but I am willing to stick around a little bit longer. If there's any other questions, fire them at me.
Yeah, Jenny, I'm going to share my screen and just share a few more things over here, and then we can come back to questions right after.
Sure. Do I need to?
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Lovely. Okay, so a few more things that I wanted to mention. We have several other trainings and webinars in the calendar. So next week on Monday and Tuesday, we have another Edulastic 101 training and an Edulastic Teacher Premium training. So if you have colleagues who are interested, or if you want to come back to get more questions answered, I invite you to do so. At the end of January and into February, we have several other webinars. These are just now being announced, so keep an eye out for those. They should be really exciting. And then lastly, I know we're going to stick around and answer a few more questions, but I just wanted to say thank you everybody for joining us. We know it's a really busy time and appreciate you being here and taking the time out of your day.